Catalina Montero woke up 15 minutes before the alarm clock rang. It was just beginning to dawn outside the window, and the cool air of early morning filled the bedroom. She slipped carefully out of bed, careful not to wake her husband. Manuel usually slept until 9, one of the perks of working at a restaurant with a late schedule. Throwing on a robe, she walked to the kitchen and turned on the coffee maker. The sound of grinding beans broke the morning silence. Catalina took out orange juice from the refrigerator and the croissants she'd bought yesterday at the corner bakery. She always ate breakfast alone. This morning silence had become a special ritual for her, a time when she could think quietly about the day ahead. At precisely 7:30, Catalina left the house. Her heels clacked on the sidewalk as she walked to the bus stop. Buenos Villa, a respectable neighborhood on the outskirts of the city, was slowly waking up. The first stores were opening, janitors were sweeping the streets, and the rare passers-by were hurrying about their business. The El Sol Hotel, where Catalina worked, was located in the center of the city, an imposing colonial-style building built in the early 20th century. Entering the spacious lobby, she said hello to the security guard and made her way to the front desk, where her co-worker Victoria, who was finishing up her night shift, was already waiting for her. "Good morning," Victoria greeted her, fixing her perfectly styled graying hair. It was a quiet night. Only room 312 complained about noisy neighbors. "I logged everything." Catalina nodded, reviewing the entries. She loved her job. Every day brought something new, meeting interesting people from all over the world. In her 6 years at El Sol, she had learned the ins and outs of the hotel business. It was a busy morning. A group of businessmen from Brazil was leaving the hotel early. They had to organize a transfer to the airport. Then, an elderly couple from Germany couldn't figure out the air conditioning in their room. Catalina patiently explained to them how the system worked until she was sure that the problem was solved. By lunchtime, the flow of guests had died down a bit. Catalina was just finishing entering the new guests' information into the computer when Dulce, her friend from the reservations department, approached the desk. "Señor Suarez wants to see you," she announced. "Right away." Catalina raised her eyebrows in surprise. The hotel manager rarely communicated directly with the staff, preferring to relay orders through the managers. She quickly checked her appearance in the mirror behind the counter. Impeccably ironed white blouse, navy blue skirt, minimal makeup. Alejandro Suarez's office was on the second floor. Catalina knocked on the massive mahogany door. "Come in," came a deep voice. The director stood at the window, a tall man with graying on his temples and a commanding gaze. He gestured for Catalina to sit down. "Señora Montero, I have been observing your work for a long time," he began, lowering himself into a leather chair. "You have shown yourself to be a responsible and competent employee. This morning our manager of admissions and placement has tendered his resignation. He is moving to another city. I would like to offer the position to you." Catalina's breath caught. A promotion. She'd envisioned this moment so many times, but the reality was unexpected. "Thank you for your confidence, Señor Suarez," she replied, trying to make her voice sound confident. "I will do my best to live up to your expectations." "I have no doubt," the director nodded. "Starting Monday, you will begin your new duties. Your salary will increase by 40%. Discuss all details with the head of human resources." As she left the office, Catalina felt her heart pounding with joy. The first thing she did was call Manuel. "Beloved, I have amazing news," she exclaimed as soon as he picked up the phone. "I've been promoted to reception manager." "Congratulations, darling." You could hear the genuine joy in his voice. "How about we celebrate tonight? Go to a movie and then have dinner somewhere?" "Sure, I'll be off at 6. The rest of the working day flew by. Her co-workers congratulated her on her promotion. Dulce gave her a big hug and promised to throw a real party over the weekend. In the evening, Manuel met her at the hotel entrance. He looked particularly handsome in the dark jeans and blue shirt Catalina had given him for his birthday. He smelled of spices. Apparently, he hadn't had time to change after working in the kitchen. There was a romantic comedy playing in the movie theater. They sat in the semi-darkness of the hall, holding hands as in their youth, when they had just started dating. After the movie, they went to a small cafe not far from home. "To my talented wife," Manuel toasted, raising his glass of red wine. "I always knew you would succeed." Catalina smiled, looking at her husband. 12 years together, and he still knew how to make her heart beat faster. "You know," he said as they were nearing the house, "we'll need to update your closet. The manageress has to look impeccable. I have a few suits." No, you need something special. We'll go shopping this weekend." At home, they sat in the kitchen for a long time discussing future plans. Catalina talked about her new responsibilities, made plans to improve the department. Manuel listened attentively, sometimes asking questions and giving advice. Falling asleep that night, Catalina felt an unusual peace. Life seemed wonderful. A favorite job, a wonderful husband, new prospects ahead. The weekend after Catalina's promotion was really happy. She and Manuel walked around several shopping centers, choosing new outfits for her future position. Her husband insisted on buying an expensive ivory business suit and several silk blouses. "You have to look like a real manager," he said, paying off his credit card. On Sunday, they had guests over, Dulce and her husband and a few other friends. Manuel cooked his specialty, Argentine-style beef with grilled vegetables. Everyone congratulated Catalina, drank wine, and reminisced about stories from the past. "Do you remember how they met?" Dulcet asked when the conversation turned to the early days of their relationship. Catalina smiled. It had happened 12 years ago when she had just started working at El Sol. Manuel had been a regular cook at the hotel restaurant then, not yet the chef. One day she had gone down to the kitchen to discuss the menu for an important banquet. A young cook with a mischievous smile immediately caught her eye. "He used to drop spoons on purpose to get past the administrative department," Catalina laughingly told her guests. "And then he sent me special desserts at lunchtime for a whole week." "I was just testing your taste." Manuel winked, putting his arm around his wife's shoulders. "You chose chocolate soufflé, my specialty." Their first date took place in a small park near the hotel. Manuel brought a basket of food he'd prepared himself. They sat on a bench until sunset, talking about everything in the world. He talked about his dream of becoming a chef. She shared her plans to climb the ladder in the hotel business. A year later, they got married. A modest ceremony in the circle of close friends and relatives. They spent their honeymoon in a small coastal town, walking on the beach and enjoying each other's company. Then they were sure that their love would last forever. The first years of married life flew by like a blink of an eye. They saved up money, bought a small apartment in Buenos Villa, arranged it on weekends. Manuel was gradually promoted. His talent was noticed, and 2 years ago he received the position of chef in a prestigious restaurant in the center of the city. Catalina remembered being overjoyed at his success. They celebrated in the very park where their first date had been. Manuel had prepared the basket of food again, only this time the dishes were much more exquisite. "Now I can treat you to something special," he said then. At the table, Catalina contemplated his profile as he passionately told his friends about the new menu at his restaurant. She knew every feature of his face, the small scar above his eyebrow from a childhood prank, the crinkles in the corners of his eyes that appeared when he laughed, the stubborn chin. How fortunate that they had both achieved what they had dreamed of in their youth. The guests dispersed late in the evening. Catalina did the dishes, refusing her husband's help. He had been cooking all day, let him rest. She mechanically wiped the plates, immersed in memories. Lately something had subtly changed in their relationship. Manuel began to stay late at work more often, citing new menus and complicated orders. Sometimes he came home unusually silent, said he was tired, and went straight to bed. Catalina wrote it off as work stress. The position of chef demanded a lot of energy and time. When she finished cleaning up, she went into the bedroom. Manuel was already asleep, turned to the wall. In the past, they had always fallen asleep snuggled together, talking quietly in the dark. Catalina carefully lay down next to him, trying not to wake her husband. The next morning, she woke up in high spirits. Today was her first day in her new position. Manuel was gone. A note on the kitchen table told her that he had left early to take an important delivery of groceries. Catalina leisurely got ready for work, thinking over every detail of her look. The new suit fit perfectly, the high-heeled shoes adding confidence. She gathered her hair into a strict bun, lightly painted her eyes and lips. At the hotel, she was greeted like the heroine of the day. The staff congratulated her on her new position, gave her flowers and small souvenirs. Victoria brought a box of homemade cookies and Dulce a framed photo of them laughing together at last year's corporate party. The day was filled with meetings and new responsibilities. Catalina familiarized herself with documentation, communicated with the staff, and solved organizational issues. By evening, she felt pleasantly tired, the kind of fatigue one feels after a job well done. When she returned home, she found her apartment empty. A call to her husband went unanswered. Only an hour later came the message. "Urgent banquet, I'll be late. Don't wait up." In the past, he always warned in advance about such events, spoke in detail about the menu, advised on the design of the dishes. Catalina warmed up her dinner and sat down to watch her favorite TV series. She tried not to think about the fact that her husband was spending more and more evenings at work. After all, they both had responsible positions that required full commitment. Tomorrow she would be sure to cook something special for dinner, and they would spend the evening together like they used to. Manuel returned past midnight. "Sorry, darling. Very complicated day," he muttered as he headed for the shower. Catalina pretended to sleep as he lay down next to her. It had been 2 weeks since Catalina had started in her new position. She had quickly settled into her duties as manager and had made a few successful changes in the organization of the staff. The staff respected her for her fairness and attention to detail, and management approved of the new shift assignment system. That day, Catalina decided to surprise Manuel by stopping by his restaurant during her lunch break. They hadn't seen each other much the last few days. He was always staying late and leaving earlier than her in the mornings. Catalina missed their leisurely conversations and dinners together. Catalina fixed her hair and ruffled her jacket before entering. The maitre d', recognizing her as the chef's wife, bowed respectfully and ushered her into the kitchen. The spacious kitchen was filled with appetizing aromas and the sounds of work, the clatter of knives, the sizzle of oil in pans, the soft commands of the cooks. She spotted Manuel at the far stove, working on some intricate composition on a plate. Next to him stood a young girl in a waitress uniform, a slender brunette with her hair pulled back into a high ponytail. "Chef, I think this dish lacks color," the girl said, practically touching his arm with her shoulder. "Maybe add a sprig of basil?" Manuel smiled a peculiar smile at her. "Rosario, your sense of beauty does not fail me." Catalina froze in the doorway, observing the scene. Something about their interaction seemed wrong to her. Too close they stood. Too intimate was this conversation about the basilica. "Darling!" she called out, taking a step forward. Manuel flinched and turned around. For a split second, something resembling consternation flashed in his eyes, but he immediately broke out into a smile. "Catalina, what a surprise!" He quickly wiped his hands with a towel and made his way to his wife. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming?" "I wanted to surprise you." She kissed her husband on the cheek, out of the corner of her eye noticing the waitress moving away to the other end of the kitchen. "I have an hour of time for lunch. Why don't we eat together?" I'm sorry, honey, I can't right now. Manuel waved his hands guiltily. We have an important order. We need to check everything personally, but I can have something brought to you in the lounge. No, that's okay. Catalina tried to hide her disappointment. I just wanted to see you. I'm going to go grab a bite to eat somewhere nearby. Chef, the sauce for table 7 is ready. Rosario's voice rang out. Coming, Manuel responded. Sorry, darling. Duty calls. I'll see you tonight. He gave his wife a quick peck on the cheek and hurried to the stove. Catalina walked slowly out of the kitchen, feeling an unpleasant chill in her chest. Something had changed in her husband. Before he would have dropped everything for a meal together, would have found a way to give her at least half an hour. At the small cafe across the street, she absent-mindedly picked at her salad with her fork, replaying the scene she'd seen in her head. Rosario was what he'd called her, young, beautiful, clearly interested in cooking. Catalina tried to remember if her husband had mentioned the new waitress before, but couldn't. He hadn't talked much about work at all lately. Back at the hotel, she could not concentrate on business. Manuel and Rosario were leaning over a plate, discussing the presentation of a dish. There was something in their postures, in their intonations, that made her heart clench. You seem distracted today, Dulce remarked, peeking into her office in the afternoon. Is something wrong? No, just tired. Catalina forced herself to smile. Lots of work. In the evening, she had specially prepared her husband's favorite dish, baked trout with herbs. She set the table, lit candles. Manuel returned at 9, smelling of wine. Sorry, we were tasting the new wine list, he explained when he saw her questioning look. Oh, you made dinner, but I already ate at work. Of course, Catalina began, clearing plates from the table. I was foolish not to give advance notice. No offense. He tried to hug her from behind, but she pulled away. We're in a very busy period right now. New menu, updated wine list. And a new waitress. The words came out on their own. What? Manuel frowned. Oh, you mean Rosario? She's been working for us for a month now. Smart girl, good at gastronomy. I've noticed, Catalina replied dryly, especially in how to arrange the basil properly. Don't get me started, he rubbed his face tiredly. I'm too exhausted for jealousy scenes. Rosario is just a co-worker with an interest in the profession. It's not like I'm interrogating you about the young porters at your hotel. Because I'm not standing with them in my arms discussing the arrangement of keys. You know what? Manuel picked up his cell phone from the table. I think I'm going to take a walk, get some air. We'll talk when you've calmed down. He left, slamming the door. Catalina mechanically put the food into the containers, trying to cope with her emotions. Could she really be exaggerating? Manuel was right. She'd never been jealous, trusted him unconditionally. But something told her that this situation was different from a normal working relationship. Her husband's phone beeped. A message had arrived. The screen automatically lit up, and Catalina had time to notice the sender's name, Rosario. Manuel had forgotten his phone. She reached out her hand but immediately yanked it away. No, she wouldn't read someone else's correspondence. Not yet. He came back 2 hours later. He took a silent shower and went to bed with his back to the wall. Catalina lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her mind was reeling with scraps of today's conversations, gestures, looks. She tried to convince herself that she was imagining things, but the traitorous feeling of unease wouldn't let go. In the morning, they pretended that nothing had happened. Manuel had even made her coffee and kissed her before leaving for work, but something had irrevocably changed, as if the thin glass of their marital happiness had cracked, and the crack was becoming more and more visible. After that meeting in the restaurant, Catalina began to notice more and more strange behavior of her husband. Manuel seemed to be distant, erecting an invisible wall between them. Now he constantly kept his cell phone to himself, which he had never done before. He often went into another room to answer the phone, speaking in a low voice. And in the evenings, he lingered in the restaurant more and more often. On one of the rare weekends when they had breakfast together, Catalina tried to strike up a conversation about the future. "Why don't we go somewhere for a long weekend?" she suggested, spreading some jam on her toast. "You've wanted to show me the coast at Mar del Plata for a long time." Manuel, without taking his eyes off the phone, shook his head. "Now's not a good time. We have a haute cuisine festival coming up. We need to get ready." "And when would be a better time?" Catalina set aside her unfinished toast. "We haven't been out together in 3 months. Look," he finally looked up. "I'm at an important point in my career right now. The restaurant could get a Michelin star. Do you know what that means?" "I do. But can't you at least carve out a couple days for us?" Manuel's phone vibrated. He took a quick glance at the screen and stood up from the table. "Sorry, gotta take this. It's work-related." Catalina heard him talking quietly in the bedroom. His voice sounded softer than usual. There were special intonations in it that had previously been reserved for her. She mechanically gathered the dishes from the table, trying to drown out her growing anxiety. Lately, Manuel had been paying more attention to his appearance. He'd bought a few expensive shirts, changed his perfume, joined a gym. "A chef has to look good," he explained. He'd never cared about such things before. One day, while sorting through a basket of dirty laundry, Catalina discovered a lipstick mark on his shirt, a barely visible pink stain on the collar. She'd never used lipstick of that shade. The shirt smelled like someone else's perfume, a light floral scent with a hint of vanilla. In the evening, she tried to talk about it. "I washed your shirts today," she began as they sat in front of the television. "Hmm?" Manuel withdrew absent-mindedly. "One had a lipstick mark on it. Pink." He turned to her, and something akin to fear flashed in his gaze, but was immediately replaced by irritation. "Starting that again? It could have been anything. We have dozens of customers in our restaurant every day. Someone could have accidentally gotten dirty." "And the perfume by accident, too? Catalina, stop it." He stood up abruptly. "I'm tired of your paranoia. It's like you're purposely looking for reasons to fight. I just want to understand what's going on. You've changed, distanced yourself from me." "You're the one who's changed," he interrupted. "Ever since you got that promotion, all you've been thinking about is work, and now you suspect me of something else." He grabbed his keys and jacket. "Where are you going?" "To get some air. Don't wait up for me." The next day, Catalina decided to do some cleaning. It always helped her get her thoughts in order. While dusting the top shelves of her bedroom closet, she accidentally hit a box of papers. It fell, scattering its contents all over the floor. Picking up the papers, Catalina noticed something unusual. A small paper bag from a jewelry store tumbled over the edge of the closet. Inside was a dainty silver bracelet with a star-shaped pendant. She'd never seen this jewelry before, and Manuel hadn't given it to her. The sudden realization took her breath away. The bracelet looked new, with the date engraved on the back of the pendant, 2 weeks ago. Catalina slowly lowered herself onto the bed, clutching the jewelry in her hand. The doorbell rang. Dulcet had come in. They had agreed to have lunch together. When she saw her friend's face, she knew immediately. "What's wrong?" Catalina silently handed her the bracelet. Dulce examined the jewelry carefully. "Are you sure it's not for you?" "Absolutely. I found it in the closet in a hidden bag." They sat in the kitchen, and Catalina finally talked about everything. The young waitress, her husband's strange behavior, the lipstick marks, and the stranger's perfume. "I didn't want to believe it." She twirled the cup of cold coffee in her hands. "Convinced myself I was imagining things, but now, listen." Dulcet covered her hand with her own. "We have to act for sure. No hysteria, no rash accusations. We have to get the proof first." "What kind of proof? Follow him?" "Why not?" Dulcet hesitated. "There are miniature surveillance cameras nowadays. They can be set up so no one will notice. If Manuel is really hiding something, you'll know the truth. Are you suggesting I spy on my own husband? Do you have a choice? Otherwise, these suspicions will drive you crazy. Besides, if it turns out you were wrong, you can move on with your life in peace. Catalina twirled the bracelet in her hands. The thought of following her husband seemed wrong, but Dulce was right. She should know the truth. Where can we get cameras like this? I'll find out. Dulcet pulled out her phone. My niece works at an electronics store. I think we'll have something by tomorrow. In the evening, Manuel came home in high spirits. He brought a bottle of wine, suggested we have dinner together. I'm sorry about yesterday, he said, pouring the wine into glasses. I've really been working a lot lately. I promise. As soon as the festival is over, we'll definitely go somewhere. Catalina smiled and kept the conversation going, but the bracelet hidden in her dresser drawer was burning her soul. She looked at her husband, so dear and yet so foreign, and realized that their life would never be the same again. Tomorrow she would set up the cameras, and the truth, whatever it was, would set things right. The next day, Dulcet brought a small box to work. Here, my niece helped me pick it out. 3 wireless cameras with a motion sensor. They record sound and video in high quality, and the data is stored in the cloud. You can monitor through an app on your phone. Catalina looked at the small black devices slightly larger than a coin. They seemed like harmless toys, but the thought of their purpose made her uneasy. What if he finds them? He won't, Dulcet replied confidently. They can be disguised as anything. The key is to pick the right places. On their lunch break, they studied the instructions carefully. Catalina installed an app on her phone, checking how the system worked. The cameras were indeed easy to use. All she had to do was clip them into the chosen location and plug them in. All day she couldn't concentrate on her work. She mixed up documents twice, forgot about an important meeting with suppliers. Victoria even asked if she was sick. No one had ever seen Catalina so absent-minded. Manuel sent a message that he would be late again today, an important meeting with a restaurant critic. Don't expect me for dinner, darling. Love you. That duty phrase at the end now seemed like a taunt. Returning home early, Catalina set about installing the cameras. She placed the first one in the living room on a bookshelf between framed photographs, the lens almost invisible against the dark background. The second one was installed in the kitchen, camouflaged among the kitchen utensils on the upper shelves. She spent a long time choosing a place for the third one, and finally decided to place it in the hallway, hiding it in an artificial plant on the nightstand. Finished with the installation, she checked the cameras through the app. The image was clear, the sound recorded perfectly. Now, all that was left to do was wait. Catalina walked slowly around the apartment, looking at the familiar things. Here was a picture from their wedding. They were so happy, making plans for the future. Souvenirs from trips they'd taken together. Kitchen utensils bought for Manuel when he was just starting his career as a chef. On the windowsill stood a small cactus, Manuel's first gift. It reminds me of you, he had said then, just as prickly on the outside, but tender and vulnerable on the inside. Catalina remembered laughing at that comparison. The cactus was still alive, delighting them every year with its rare but beautiful flowers. In the bedroom, a jewelry box lay on the dressing table, gifts from her husband over the years, each one connected to some special moment. Pearl earrings for their 5th wedding anniversary, a gold pendant for their 30th anniversary, the bracelet he'd given her when he'd learned of his appointment as chef. I wonder if that silver star bracelet found in the closet was supposed to be a special gift for someone too. Catalina imagined Manuel picking it out in a jewelry store, thinking of another woman. The thought made her heart ache. She forced herself to make dinner, though she had no appetite at all. She turned on the TV, trying to distract herself from her heavy thoughts. Time stretched agonizingly slow. From time to time, Catalina checked the app. The cameras were working properly, recording empty rooms. She caught herself that every time she opened the program, she hoped to see nothing. She'd rather be an imaginative fool than have her suspicions confirmed. At 10 o'clock, the front door opened. Manuel had returned. Catalina quickly tucked the phone under the couch cushion. "Are you still awake?" He looked tired but satisfied. "The meeting went great. The critic is thrilled with the new menu." "Congratulations." She tried to smile as naturally as possible. "Will you be having dinner?" "No. We celebrated the success at the restaurant. I'm going to shower and go to bed. I have to get up early tomorrow." Catalina watched him walk through the living room, and her heart clenched at the thought of the cameras recording his every move. She felt like a traitor. But hadn't he been the first to betray their marriage? She lay awake long into the night, listening to her husband's measured breathing. She remembered how they used to stay up late talking about everything. Manuel had shared his culinary experiments. She had told funny stories about the hotel. Now it was as if a wall of silence had grown between them. In the morning, after seeing her husband off to work, Catalina checked the camera footage first thing in the morning. Nothing unusual. Manuel had indeed come in, showered, and gone to bed. But that was only the first night. At work, she was constantly distracted by her phone, checking the camera feeds. Dulce peeked into her office closer to lunchtime. "How's it going?" "Nothing yet." Catalina shook her head. "Maybe I really did make it up? Maybe I shouldn't have—" "Wait to jump to conclusions," her friend interrupted her. "Give it time. If there's nothing in a week, you can take the cameras off and forget about it like a bad dream." The day stretched on interminably. Catalina tried to keep herself busy with work, but her thoughts kept coming back to the house. What if something was happening there right now? She realized that was silly. Manuel was always at the restaurant during business hours. She could check it out for herself. But the intrusive thoughts wouldn't let go. In the evening, her husband again sent a message about the delay at work. Catalina sat at home, mindlessly switching channels on the TV and every now and then glancing at the phone screen. The cameras impartially recorded the empty apartment. At one point, she caught herself talking to herself. "What am I doing? What's all this for? Shouldn't I just ask him straight out?" But she knew she couldn't. The fear of finding out the truth was no less than the fear of remaining in the dark. Manuel returned late, smelling of cigarettes again. He ate a warmed meal in silence while Catalina pretended to be engrossed in a book. She watched him furtively, trying to catch some hint, some sign that would confirm her suspicions or, on the contrary, dispel them. But her husband was calm and businesslike as usual. He talked about the previous day, complained about the negligent supplier, praised the new pastry chef. It was the same as always, as if nothing had changed. Only in his eyes there was something new, some wariness, as if he too was watching her every move. 3 days had passed since the cameras had been installed. Catalina watched the footage constantly, but nothing suspicious had happened. Manuel came home late, had dinner, and occasionally called someone at work to discuss menus and food deliveries. Everything seemed perfectly normal, and for some reason that made it all the more disturbing. That afternoon, Catalina stayed late at work, checking quarterly reports. Around 6 in the evening, Manuel called. "Honey, there's an important meeting with investors today. I'll be back very late. Don't wait up." "Okay," she replied, habitually suppressing the urge to ask for details. "Have a good meeting." Finished with her paperwork, she left the hotel at the beginning of 8. The cool evening air was pleasantly refreshing after the stuffy office. Catalina decided to walk. It was only a few blocks to her house, and a walk might help clear her head. As she approached her house, she noticed something odd. The door was ajar, and the jamb showed signs of forced entry. Her heart beat faster. Catalina cautiously climbed the stairs. The door to their apartment was also cracked. The lock had clearly been tampered with some kind of tool. She froze on the threshold, hesitating to enter. The apartment was in complete chaos. The contents of closets and drawers had been turned to the floor, things scattered all over the rooms. Couch cushions were ripped up, paintings were torn from the walls, even flower pots were turned upside down. With trembling hands, Catalina pulled out her cell phone and dialed her husband's number. Ringing. Beeps. The subscriber is temporarily unavailable. She tried again. Same result. Overcoming her fear, Catalina walked cautiously through the apartment. In the bedroom, all the drawers had been pulled out, the bed turned over. The jewelry box lay empty. All her jewelry was gone, including the family necklace from her grandmother, antique silver with large topazes. In the study, the safe had been opened. Gone were the documents and money they'd been saving for a vacation. In the kitchen, all the cabinets were open, and there were shards of broken dishes on the floor. Catalina suddenly remembered the cameras. They were supposed to record everything that had happened. With shaking fingers, she opened an app on her phone. The screen showed connection error. All 3 cameras were not responding. She looked around. The cameras had been ripped from their places. Obviously, the robbers had spotted them. She tried calling her husband again. No answer. Catalina dialed the police. Buenos Via, 24, apartment 16, her voice shook. There's been a burglary in my apartment. Yes, I'm home. I just got back. The door's been broken into. The patrol car arrived 15 minutes later. 2 young officers inspected the signs of forced entry, taking notes. One took photographs of the trashed rooms, the other drew up a report. At that moment, a panting Manuel appeared in the doorway. Catalina! What happened? I just saw the missed calls. She rushed to him, bursting into tears. Her husband hugged her tightly. Shh, shh. It's going to be okay. You're not hurt? That's the main thing. The police officers asked them to make a list of the missing items. Catalina listed jewelry in a trembling voice, naming the amounts of money stolen. Manuel sat beside her, holding her hand, his face expressing genuine concern. Strange, one of the officers remarked, judging from the tracks. The lock was picked professionally. Usually, burglars are rougher than that. Maybe someone was watching the apartment, his partner suggested. Waiting for the right moment? Manuel shook his head. We've lived here for 6 years. Never had anything like this happen. The neighborhood is quiet. Are there any security cameras in the entryway? No, Catalina replied, feeling her heart sink. She couldn't talk about her cameras without explaining why she had installed them. The cops took another look around the apartment, taking fingerprints from the doorknobs and cabinet surfaces. We'll contact you if we have any information, the senior officer said, holding out a business card. For now, I recommend changing the locks and installing an additional security system. When the police left, Manuel set about putting the apartment in order. Don't touch anything, Catalina stopped him. Let's check everything thoroughly first. Make a complete list of what's missing. Of course you're right. He took a seat next to her on the couch. I'm sorry I haven't returned your calls. We had a meeting with some important clients at the restaurant and I turned off my phone. Catalina nodded without looking at her husband. Something about his behavior seemed wrong. He was too calm for a man whose apartment had just been robbed. We'll spend the night at a hotel, Manuel suggested. And tomorrow morning we'll clean and change the locks. You go, she replied. I want to go over everything again. Make a detailed list for the police, and we need to call the insurance company. Are you sure? I don't want to leave you alone after something like this. It's okay. I just need some time to recover. Manuel reluctantly agreed. Gathering the necessary things for the night, he kissed his wife gently on the forehead. Call me if you need anything. I'll come right over. As soon as the door closed behind him, Catalina rushed to find the cameras. She found the first one behind the couch. The wires had been neatly cut. The second she found in a trash can in the kitchen. The third was lying under the nightstand in the hallway. All 3 cameras had been disconnected in the same way, Someone knew exactly how they worked. Catalina examined them more closely. The housings were intact, only the wires had been cut. She tried to turn one on. The indicator light turned red, so the recordings must have survived. With trembling fingers, she opened an app on her phone. After several attempts, she managed to reconnect to the cloud storage. The recordings were there. Catalina sank to the floor among the scattered items. An inner voice screamed that she didn't need to see those recordings, that some things were better left unsaid. But she had to know the truth. Turning on today's tape, she rewound to 3 o'clock in the afternoon, about the time, according to a neighbor who'd heard some noise, that a robbery might have taken place. Her finger froze over the play button. Catalina sat on the floor among the scattered things for almost an hour, hesitating to turn on the tape. Her mind refused to accept what was happening as reality. She mechanically went through the scattered photos taken out of albums, stacking them neatly. Some of the frames were broken, shards of glass glinting in the light of the desk lamp. Finally, she forced herself up and began a methodical inspection of the apartment. She took out a notebook and began to make a list of the missing items. The insurance company would require a detailed report. In the bedroom, she turned over the mattress, straightened the crumpled linens. One pillowcase was torn, as if someone had deliberately searched for something inside the pillow. The closet was in chaos, clothes thrown off the hangers, drawers pulled out. Catalina methodically put things back in their places, noting what was missing. Gone were 2 mink coats, Manuel's gifts for past birthdays. Gone was the leather briefcase she'd bought her husband for their 10th wedding anniversary. There was an empty jewelry box lying on the dressing table. Catalina crouched on the edge of the bed, remembering each missing piece. A gold bracelet with sapphires, a wedding gift from her parents. The pearl necklace Manuel had given her when he got his first promotion. Emerald earrings from her aunt for her 30th birthday. But what bothered her most was the missing family necklace. That piece of jewelry had been passed down the female line in their family for 4 generations. Her grandmother had given it to Catalina shortly before she died. "Take care of it," she had said then. "It has not only material value but also the memory of our family. Someday you will pass it on to your daughter." The necklace was marvelous workmanship. Silver lace encrusted with topazes. Her grandmother told its story. The jewelry had been commissioned by her great-grandfather from a famous jeweler for his young wife. Each stone was chosen separately and cut by hand. In those days, the family was rich and powerful, owning several haciendas. Catalina kept her necklace in a separate velvet box, taking it out only on special occasions. The last time she wore it was on Manuel's birthday last year. He had long admired the way the stones shimmered in the candlelight, saying that the jewelry seemed to be made for her. In her office, she checked the contents of the safe that had been opened. Missing was all the cash, almost 15,000 pesos they'd saved for the vacation. Gone were the deeds to the apartment and the insurance policies. In the corner of the safe was a crumpled piece of paper. Catalina unfolded it and recognized it as a receipt from a jewelry store, the one from the star bracelet. In the kitchen, she collected the shards of her favorite coffee set, a wedding gift from her colleagues. She sorted through the spices scattered on the countertop. Manuel had always been proud of his collection of rare spices brought from different countries. Now some of the jars were broken. The subtle aromas blended into a strange composition. In the living room, she tidied up the bookshelves. The books were dumped as they were, some crumpled. She was especially distressed by the condition of an antique edition of a cookbook, a gift from Manuel's grandmother. The binding was torn, the pages wrinkled. She carefully straightened the bent corners, closed the book, and put it back. Catalina methodically photographed all the damage, for the insurance company and the police. She clicked every drawer pulled out, every broken lock, every broken thing. The flashlight made the mess seem even more depressing. Around midnight, Manuel called. "How are you, darling? Why don't you come to the hotel after all?" "No, I'm almost done with the inventory," she lied. "I'll call the insurance company first thing tomorrow morning." "Okay, just be sure to chain the door shut, and if you hear anything, call the police right away." "Sure. Good night." There was genuine concern in his voice. Catalina remembered how her husband had hugged her in front of the police, how he had comforted and supported her. Had it all been an act? She glanced at her phone, where the camera footage was waiting in the app. But instead of turning on the video, she continued cleaning. As if delaying the inevitable moment, she began dusting the top shelves, gathering up scattered office supplies, hanging clothes in the closet. On the mezzanine, she found a box of old letters and postcards. The papers were scattered, some crumpled. Catalina started going through them. Holiday greetings, notes from Manuel left on the kitchen table, postcards from their first trips together. Here were movie tickets from their first date. A note he'd passed to her through a waiter at a restaurant. "You're the most beautiful girl I've ever met." A postcard from that seaside town where they honeymooned. A program from the theater they went to on their 5th wedding anniversary. Every scrap of paper held memories of happy moments in their lives. 12 years was a long time. They had built their family together, supported each other, shared joys and sorrows. How could it all come crashing down? At 3 in the morning, Catalina finally forced herself to take a break. Her hands trembled with fatigue, her eyes slipped shut. She brewed a strong cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table, spreading out the list of missing items in front of her. In addition to jewelry and money, some expensive items had disappeared: a laptop, a tablet, Manuel's collectible wristwatch. But many valuable items remained untouched. For example, an expensive video camera was still standing on a shelf in the living room. An antique vase for which they had paid a decent sum at auction had not even been moved. Strange MO for common thieves. It was as if they knew exactly what they were looking for, as if someone had made a list of things they needed beforehand. Catalina looked at her phone. It was time to find out the truth. She opened the app and found a recording from the afternoon. 3 o'clock in the afternoon. That was when, according to the neighbor, the noise had been heard in the apartment. Taking a deep breath, Catalina pressed play. An image of their empty living room appeared on the screen. The clock read 15:08. A few seconds later, the key turned in the door lock. On the phone screen, the front door opened and Manuel entered the apartment. He was alone. With a quick, confident step, he walked into the bedroom, took out a gym bag from the closet. The camera in the bedroom recorded him methodically putting some things from the closet into it. Catalina watched without taking her eyes off the screen. Here her husband comes to the dressing table, opens the jewelry box. His movements are precise and deliberate, no hurry or nervousness. He's even wearing gloves so as not to leave fingerprints. He put the velvet box with the family necklace into the bag especially carefully, wrapping the jewelry with a soft cloth. Then he took a bunch of lockpicks out of his pocket and went to the safe. He opened it in a few minutes. It was obvious that the actions had been worked out in advance. After that, the main show began. Manuel methodically made it look like a robbery, pulling out drawers, throwing things around, overturning furniture, tearing cushions, throwing books off shelves, smashing dishes. All this was done with a kind of cold calculation, not a single unnecessary movement. When he got to the cameras, he carefully cut the wires, one by one. Catalina sat motionless, clutching the phone in her hands. Everything inside her was numb. She rewound the tape, turned it back on again. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe it was some kind of mistake. But no. There he was, her husband staging a robbery of their home in cold blood. The sound of an incoming message made her flinch. It was Manuel. "I can't sleep. I keep thinking about you. How are you? Maybe you'll come after all." Catalina tossed the phone away like a poisonous snake. His concern now seemed mocking. She remembered his demeanor in front of the cops, the perfect game of a loving husband concerned for his wife's safety. How many times had he played with her feelings like that? The moment when he had hugged her, comforting her after the robbery, came to mind. His touch now made her feel cold. How could he? 12 years together. Had it all been a lie? She got up and started pacing the apartment as if trying to find some explanation for what she'd seen. Maybe he'd been forced? Blackmailed? But no, his actions were too confident, too deliberate. He'd obviously prepared for this in advance. In the bathroom, Catalina splashed cold water on her face. A pale, gaunt woman with droopy eyes looked back at her from the mirror. She tried to remember when she had first noticed the change in her husband's behavior. That young waitress, Rosario. Had it all started around that time? Returning to the kitchen, she turned the tape back on. Now that she knew the truth, she noticed new details. Here he was carefully packing some documents, probably those kept in the safe, carefully putting the money into a separate envelope. The jewelry was sorted into small bags, as if he had decided in advance what would go to whom. The time on the tape showed that the whole operation took less than an hour. Professional work, I'll give you that. I wonder how many times he rehearsed. How long did he plan it? And most importantly, who was he trying to do it for? Catalina opened the china cabinet and took out the bottle of wine they'd been saving for a special occasion. Well, there might never be a more special occasion. She poured a glass, but didn't drink it, just watched the dark red liquid shimmer in the light of the lamp. The clock on the wall was ticking, the same one he'd given her for the housewarming party. "To count down the happy minutes of our life together," Manuel had said then. Catalina took the clock off and put it in a box of broken things. Now every item in the house connected to it hurt. She pulled out her laptop and opened her email. She needed to write a statement to the insurance company. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. How to describe what had happened? My husband staged a robbery to steal my jewelry? Sounds like the plot of a cheap melodrama. Her gaze fell on her wedding ring. Catalina removed it and placed it on the table. The thin gold band she'd worn for 12 years now seemed unbearably heavy. Engraved inside was the date of their wedding and the words, "Forever yours." How bitterly ironic. Outside the window it began to lighten. Catalina didn't notice how she sat up all night, watching the tape over and over, trying to realize her husband's betrayal. Her phone showed 5 missed calls from Manuel and several messages. She didn't bother to read them. She had to decide what to do next. Report it to the police? But what proof did she have? Surreptitiously installed camera footage. That wouldn't be much help in court. Besides, she wasn't sure she was ready for a public scandal. Should she call Dulce? A friend would probably be supportive, but what could she advise? What do you do when someone you trusted implicitly turns out to be a stranger? At 7 in the morning, another message came from her husband. "I'm on my way home. Need to call a handyman to change the locks." Catalina quickly packed her phone, laptop, and papers into her bag. No, she wasn't ready to see him now. Not ready to look into the eyes of the man who betrayed her in such cold blood. Hastily, she wrote a note. "Gone to the office. I need to get my insurance paperwork ready right away." It would give her some time to gather her thoughts and decide how to proceed. As she left the apartment, she took one last look back at their family nest, which had been turned into a set for a play called Robbery. Everything around her seemed fake, as if she had entered a foreign life where nothing could be taken at face value. In the bag were 3 small cameras, mute witnesses of betrayal. Now they will be her main trump card in the upcoming conversation with her husband. But first, she must visit the police station and show the footage to the detective. It's time to turn this production into a real criminal case. The police station greeted Catalina with the hum of voices and the smell of strong coffee. It was early 9 in the morning. The shift had just started. At the front desk, A young officer was filling out some paperwork, occasionally answering the phone. "What can I do for you, Senora?" He raised his eyes to Catalina. "I'm looking for Sergeant Morales. He took a robbery report in Buenos Villas yesterday." "One moment." The officer picked up the receiver of an internal phone. "Sarge, you have a visitor for yesterday's case." Ramon Morales appeared to be a heavy-set man of about 45 with an attentive gaze and a neatly trimmed mustache. He led Catalina into a small office littered with file folders. "Have a seat, Senora Montero. Any new details?" Catalina pulled her cell phone and cameras out of her bag. Her hands trembled slightly. "Yes, Sergeant. What happened yesterday? It was no ordinary robbery." She told him everything, about her suspicions about her husband, about the installation of the surveillance cameras, about what she'd seen on the tapes. Morales listened intently, making notes in his notebook. "Can I see those tapes?" Catalina turned on the video. On the phone's small screen, the scene from yesterday unfolded, Manuel methodically making it look like a robbery. The sergeant paused the tape several times, taking in the details. "Very interesting," he said when the video ended. "A lot of things make sense now. We noticed some oddities right away, an overly professional break-in, selectivity in the choice of stolen items." "What do I do now?" Catalina asked quietly. "For starters, we need to officially record this recording as physical evidence. I'll call in a technician." Catalina spent the next hour answering the CSI's questions. He copied the video, examined the cameras, made a detailed report. Then the female investigator appeared and recorded additional statements. "Tell me, Senora Montero," she asked, "do you have any guesses about your husband's motives? To whom could the stolen valuables have been destined?" Catalina talked about Rosario, about the bracelet she had found, about her husband's strange behavior in recent months. Each word was difficult to say, as if by saying them aloud, she was making her husband's betrayal all the more real. "We'll verify that information," the investigator nodded. "You'll need to sign some papers." While Catalina filled out the paperwork, Sergeant Morales returned to the office. "I sent a patrol to the restaurant where your husband works," he reported. "But he's not there. His co-workers said he called in this morning and took the morning off." "He texted me that he was on his way home to change the locks," Catalina recalled. "You'd better not go back to the apartment yet. Do you have a place to stay?" "Yeah, I can stay at a friend's house." "Great. We'll set up surveillance on the house and try to apprehend your husband as soon as he shows up." Catalina left the station around noon. The sun was high and the streets were filled with people hurrying about their business. Just an ordinary day in the big city. But for her, the whole world had changed. She pulled out her phone, 10 missed calls from Manuel and a few messages. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering?" "I'm at the apartment. I called the handyman." "Honey, I'm worried. Call me as soon as you can." Her hands trembled as she dialed Dulce's number. "Can I stay with you for a few days?" "Sure." Her friend sounded worried in her voice. "What's wrong?" "I'll tell you when I see you. Are you home?" Dulce's apartment was in a quiet neighborhood, half an hour from downtown. Catalina had been here often. She and Manuel had come to barbecues, celebrated holidays. Now those memories resonated with pain. Dulce met her at the doorstep. One look at her friend's face and she understood. "Cameras?" she asked quietly. Catalina nodded. They walked to the kitchen, where Dulce silently poured 2 cups of strong coffee and pulled out a box of chocolate chip cookies. "Tell me about it." And Catalina did, about the security footage, about the visit to the police, about her feelings. The words poured out like a dam had burst. Dulcet listened without interrupting, only occasionally squeezing her friend's hand. "What are you going to do now?" "I don't know." Catalina shook her head. "The police are looking for him, but I can't even imagine looking him in the eye." The phone vibrated again, another call from her husband. Dulcet took the device from her friend's hands. "I'll answer it," she said firmly. "I'll tell him you're at my place, upset about the robbery and want to be alone." Catalina listened to her friend talk to Manuel. His voice came from the speaker so familiar, so native, but now there was a fake note in it. "Yes, she's here. No, she can't talk right now. Of course, I'll take care of her." After the call, Dulcet helped her friend get settled in the guest room. She brought fresh linens, towels, and a robe. "Get some rest," she said, "and tonight we'll decide what to do next." Left alone, Catalina sat down on the bed. In her bag were the papers she'd managed to grab from home and 3 small cameras, silent witnesses to her family's destruction. The window overlooked the park where she and Manuel often walked on weekends. There was the bench where they'd sat last fall, sharing plans for the future. He talked about expanding the restaurant, she about new projects at the hotel. Who would have thought that in a few months everything would come crashing down? The phone rang, this time Sergeant Morales. "Senora Montero, we have some news. We've interviewed the restaurant staff. The waitress, Rosario Valdez, didn't show up for work today either. It seems they were acting in concert." Catalina listened silently to the details of the investigation. Colleagues had long noticed a special relationship between the chef and the young waitress. Some had seen them together in town. Others had heard scraps of intimate conversations. A story as old as the world. A successful man and a young beauty. "We're checking every possible place they could be," the sergeant continued. "Put surveillance on the airport and bus stations. Sooner or later they'll show themselves." After talking to the policeman, Catalina sat motionless for a long time. Scraps of memories swirled in her head, their first meeting, their wedding, their plans and dreams together. How could she betray all that for the sake of an affair with a young waitress? In the evening, a text came from an unknown number. "I'm sorry. I'll explain everything." She deleted it without answering. No amount of explaining was going to repair the broken trust. The second day after Catalina contacted the police, Sergeant Morales called her early in the morning. "We've got your husband in custody," he reported. "He tried to withdraw a large sum of money from the bank. He's at the station right now giving a statement. We need you for a confrontation." Catalina sat in the investigator's office, waiting for Manuel to be brought in. Her hands, folded in her lap, were icy cold. Next to her was the lawyer provided by the police, an older man with kind eyes and graying temples. The door opened. Manuel entered, accompanied by 2 officers. He looked gaunt and wrinkled with stubble on his cheeks. When he saw his wife, he jerked as if he wanted to approach her, but the escort held him in place. "Catalina!" His voice sounded hoarse. "Senor Montero," the interrogator interrupted him, "have a seat. We have a few questions." Manuel sank into a chair. His gaze darted between his wife and the investigator. "Do you know why you're here?" "Yes," he answered quietly. "Because of the staged robbery. Tell me in detail what happened on the 18th between 15 and 16 o'clock. Manuel took a deep breath. "I came home, used lockpicks to leave signs of forced entry, took jewelry, money, and documents from the safe, made it look like a robbery." "Why did you do that?" He cast a quick glance at Catalina. "I needed the money and valuables." "For what?" For another man." Catalina clenched her fists so hard her nails dug into her palms. The investigator placed a photograph in front of Manuel. "This is Rosario Valdez, the waitress from your restaurant?" "Yes," he answered barely audibly. "How long have you been seeing her?" 4 months. Catalina felt something shiver inside. 4 months. All that time, while she'd been making plans for the future, rejoicing in her promotion, trying to mend her relationship with her husband, he'd been seeing someone else. "Tell me about your relationship with Señorita Valdez." Manuel ran his hand over his face. "She came to work at the restaurant 6 months ago. Young, beautiful, interested in cooking. We chatted a lot. Then we started seeing each other after work. One thing led to another. So you decided to steal your wife's jewelry to give a gift to your mistress? Rosario dreamed of beautiful jewelry. She said a chef's girlfriend should look appropriate. I wanted to please her. Catalina couldn't stand it. The family necklace is for her, too? Manuel flinched at the sound of her voice. I'm sorry. She saw it in a picture on my phone, said she fell in love with it at first sight. That piece of jewelry belonged to my grandmother. Catalina could barely contain her emotions. It's been passed down in our family for generations. Señora Montero, please. The investigator stopped her gently. Let us continue. Señor Montero, where are the stolen valuables now? In a safety deposit box. Here is the key. Manuel pulled a small key from his pocket. I will return everything. And where is Señorita Valdez now? I don't know. We had arranged to meet tonight at the Palace Hotel, but... Write down the address. The investigator nodded to his assistant. Send a team immediately. Catalina stared at her husband, trying to see in him the man she'd loved for 12 years. But in front of her sat a strange man, confused, pathetic, trying to justify his betrayal. Why did you put on this whole act? She asked. Why didn't you just leave? Manuel looked up at her. I didn't want to hurt you. I thought it would be easier this way. You'd get the insurance and you'll start a new life with a young mistress, adorning it with my jewelry? Catalina grinned bitterly. Very noble. I'm confused, he lowered his head. Rosario. She's so young, full of energy. Next to her, I felt like a different person. And next to me, you've always been so proper, successful. You've always had everything planned out, everything worked out, and I'm just a cook. You're not just a cook, you're my husband. Was. As she left the office, she heard her husband's voice. Catalina, I really meant well. She didn't turn around. Dulce was waiting for her in the hallway. Her friend had insisted on accompanying her to the station. How are you? I don't know, Catalina answered honestly. I feel like the last 12 years of my life have turned out to be a fantasy. They walked outside. The day was overcast. Rain was going to fall. How fitting for her mood. Let's go to my place, Dulcet suggested. I'll make your favorite herbal tea. No, I have to go to work. I can't sit at home and think about all this. At the hotel, Catalina plunged headlong into her work, checking reports, holding meetings, dealing with current issues. Colleagues delicately did not mention the robbery. Although everyone knew about it, news traveled fast in their city. Toward evening, Sergeant Morales called. We have Señorita Valdez in custody at the hotel. Some of the stolen jewelry was found on her, including a silver star bracelet. The rest of the valuables were found in a safety deposit box, just as your husband said. And the family necklace? It's in there too. All the valuables are now in the vault at the police station. You will be able to pick them up after the necessary paperwork is completed. Catalina thanked the sergeant and hung up. Outside the window it began to rain. Large drops drummed on the glass. She watched the streams of water blur the outline of the city and thought about how one betrayal could wash away all the happy memories, leaving behind only bitter residue. A message from an unfamiliar number appeared on her phone screen. I'm sorry. I know this won't fix anything, but I have to say it. Rosario. Catalina deleted the message before she finished reading it. Too late for an apology. The next few days passed as if in a blur. Dulce insisted Catalina stay with her for a while longer. You don't need to go back to that apartment now, her friend said. Let things settle down. One evening, as they sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, Dulce recounted what she had learned from colleagues at the restaurant. The story of Manuel and Rosario's relationship turned out to be banal to the point of obscenity. Rosario had come to work at the restaurant 6 months ago, young, attractive, with great ambition. She immediately noticed the chef, a successful, talented man. She began to show an interest in cooking, staying after her shift to watch him cook. "Did she know he was married?" Catalina asked. "Of course she did," replied Dulce. "What's more, she saw you several times when you came to the restaurant, but that didn't stop her." Gradually, their communication became more and more personal. Rosario knew how to listen, to admire, to create the illusion of complete understanding. She told Manuel what he wanted to hear, that he was unappreciated, that he deserved more, that with his talent he could have his own restaurant. Their first meeting outside of work was at a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Manuel ostensibly wanted to discuss the new menu. The conversation lasted late into the night. After that, they started meeting regularly, then in cafes, then in the park, then in inexpensive hotels. "One of the chefs saw them together at the mall," Dulce continued. "They were picking out clothes. Rosario was trying on expensive dresses, and Manuel was paying with his credit card." Catalina remembered the strange bills she'd noticed lately. Manuel had explained them as restaurant expenses, buying rare foods for special dishes, and she believed it. "But why did he decide to steal?" she asked. "He has a good salary, bonuses." According to Rosario in the interrogation, she often talked about how much she liked your jewelry, especially that antique necklace. She saw it in a picture on Manuel's phone, hinted that such things deserve to be in the possession of a woman who truly appreciates it. Catalina took a large sip of wine. It didn't occur to her how someone she'd lived with for 12 years could be so manipulative. "And what's being said at the restaurant?" "Everyone is shocked, of course. The restaurant owner has already fired them both. The reputation of the place is in jeopardy. The only thing in town is talking about this story." The next day, Catalina met with the investigator. He showed her the transcript of Rosario's interrogation. "I didn't mean for it to go down like this," the girl's statement read. "Manuel was so kind to me, so attentive. He told me that his marriage had long ago become routine, that his wife was only busy with her career. I thought we could be happy together." "And the jewelry?" the investigator asked. "That was a stupid idea. I saw the necklace in the picture and joked that such a piece of jewelry would suit me better than his wife. He took it seriously, said he'd make it look like a robbery, the insurance would cover it." Catalina set the protocol aside. She was disgusted to read these excuses. "What are they facing?" she asked the investigator. "Given that the valuables were returned and there was no physical violence, most likely probation, but they'll both have criminal records." After leaving the station, Catalina wandered the streets for a long time. She tried to figure out how she could have missed the obvious signs of infidelity, or didn't want to notice. In the evening, she received a call from Manuel's mother, an older woman whom Catalina had always respected. "Daughter," her mother-in-law's voice trembled, "I don't know what to say. My son, I can't believe he's capable of such a thing." "I couldn't believe it either, Mercedes. He's always been a good boy. That girl must have bewitched him. He's a grown man, Mercedes. He made his own choices." After the conversation, Catalina felt devastated. She realized that for Manuel's mother, this situation was also a blow. The old woman was proud of her son, of his success, and now the whole town was discussing his betrayal and shameful detention. At the hotel, colleagues tried to support Catalina as best they could. Victoria brought her homemade pastries, telling her to eat well in difficult times. Alejandro Suarez, the director, offered to take a vacation, but she refused. Work was the only thing that helped her not to think about what had happened. Dulce was around all the time. She picked up necessary items from Catalina's apartment, arranged a meeting with a good lawyer, and handled the paperwork for the insurance company. "You know what the most frustrating thing is?" Catalina said to her friend late one night. "I really loved him, didn't I? Supported him all those years, believed in him. When he got the chef position, I was happier than when I got promoted myself." "Some men can't stand their wives' success," Dulcet remarked. They feel like they're losing control. And that girl, Rosario, she made him feel strong, significant, admired him, looked up to him, and for that, he crossed 12 years of our lives. The next day, Catalina received a letter from Manuel's lawyer. He asked for a meeting to discuss the terms of the divorce and division of property. She gave the letter to her lawyer without reading beyond the first line. That evening, sitting in Dulce's living room, she watched the news on television. The crime news flashed a story about their case. No names, just dry facts about fraud and a staged robbery. The screen showed the front of La Estrella restaurant and the police station building. "Turn it off," she asked her friend. "I don't want to see that." Dulce changed the channel to a music channel. They sat in silence, listening to the quiet tune. Outside the window, dusk was falling. The windows were lit up in the neighboring house. An ordinary evening, an ordinary life. Only for Catalina, everything had changed irrevocably. A week after his arrest, Manuel, through his lawyer, asked for a meeting. He wanted to personally return all the stolen items and talk. Catalina hesitated for a long time but finally agreed. It had to be done to make a point. The meeting was scheduled in the office of her lawyer, neutral territory. Catalina arrived early. She sat down in a leather armchair, straightened the folds of her navy blue dress. She had specifically chosen this outfit, businesslike, restrained, creating a sense of distance. At exactly the appointed time, the door opened. Manuel entered carrying a bulky briefcase. He had lost weight during the week, shadows under his eyes. The suit, usually impeccably tailored, now looked wrinkled. "Hello," his voice sounded uncertain. Catalina nodded without saying a word. Manuel placed the briefcase on the table between them, like a barrier separating their past and present lives. "Here's everything," he began, pulling things out. "Jewelry, documents, money. I haven't spent anything." Catalina watched as familiar jewelry cases lay on the table. Here was a box with a pearl necklace, a box with a sapphire bracelet, a velvet pouch with emerald earrings, and finally, an antique box with the family necklace. "Sorry about the scratches," Manuel looked at her guiltily. We were careless with it. You tried it on." Her voice sounded unexpectedly harsh. "Rosario, she really wanted to see how it would look." "Shut up," Catalina held up a hand. "I don't want to hear it." She opened the box containing the necklace. The silver had tarnished, a barely visible crack appearing on one of the topazes. It was as if the jewelry had lost part of its soul, just like their marriage. "I'll pay for the restoration," Manuel said hastily. "And in fact, I'm willing to compensate." "I don't want your money," she interrupted. "Just explain. Why all this show of robbery? Why couldn't you just leave?" Manuel sank into a chair, running a hand over his face. "I'm confused. Rosario, she was always talking about how talented I was, how successful I could be, that I needed a woman to support me in everything, not to build my career. And I didn't support you?" Catalina grinned bitterly. "Who helped you prepare for your interview for the chef position? Who checked the calculations for the new menu? Who listened to all your ideas and plans?" "That's different," he shook his head. "You've always been so, self-sufficient. You didn't need my protection, my help. And Rosario played the part of the weak girl who needed a strong man. And for that, you decided to steal a family heirloom?" She said that such a necklace should belong to a woman who would wear it with pride, not keep it in a box, that she would shine in it at all important events. "I see," Catalina began, putting the jewelry back into her briefcase. "So you've decided that bling and the admiring glances of a young waitress are worth 12 years of marriage?" "No, he stammered. "I really thought it was best for everyone. You'd get insurance. I'd start a new life. And you didn't think about the fact that you're betraying not only me, but my family as well. This necklace is a memory of my grandmother, of our family. It was supposed to pass to my daughter." Her voice trembled. They'd dreamed of children, but they'd put it off. First they needed to get on their feet. Then a career opportunity came along. And now— "Catalina," Manuel stepped forward. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but maybe in time—" "No," she shook her head. "Some things can't be undone. You didn't just cheat on me. You betrayed my trust in the most despicable way. Used our shared memories, our past as a backdrop for your deception." She stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. "My attorney has prepared the divorce papers. You can have everything you want from the apartment. I don't want to live there anymore. Keep the car, too. I'll buy a new one." Manuel stood up as well. He looked aged, broken. "You know," he said quietly, "I really loved you, didn't I? All these years—" "No," Catalina interrupted him. "You loved the image of a successful wife who helped you build your career. And when I became successful myself, you needed a girl willing to play the role of admiring suitor." She picked up the jewelry briefcase. "Goodbye, Manuel. I hope you find what you're looking for." He made a movement as if he wanted to hold her, but dropped his hand. "Forgive me," he whispered. "For everything. I'm sorry." Catalina walked out of the office without looking back. Dulcet was waiting for her in the reception area. Her friend had insisted on being present, though she remained outside the door. "How are you?" "Empty," Catalina answered honestly. "It's like the last 12 years have been someone else's life." They walked outside. The day was sunny. People were hurrying along the sidewalk. A waiter was setting up tables at the entrance to a nearby cafe. Just an ordinary day in the big city. No one knew that for Catalina, an entire era of her life ended at that moment. "Let's go to my place," Dulce suggested. "We'll open a bottle of wine. Talk." "No," Catalina shook her head. "I have to go to the bank, put all this stuff in a safe deposit box, and then I just want to be alone." "Are you sure?" "Yes. You know, I was so afraid of this meeting. I thought it would hurt to see him, to talk to him, and now it's just empty. It was like I had a complete stranger in front of me."